I've learned a lot coming from this conference, and one of the things that I learned from the last year's conference this year's was something to do with fundraising. Luke was a great presenter, and he really talked about how you have to incorporate multiple things, not just direct mail or email or telemarketing, but all of those pieces together. So being able to increase fundraising has been a big success. But what I most feel like I've learned from coming to conferences is that the library really needs to be the community center. So over the past, I've been coming to the conferences over 5 years, but over the past 3 years we had our strategic plan, and becoming the library, the community center was the focus. So we increased programs by 48%. We increased attendance at those programs by 41% over the past 3 years through that strategic plan. And now I'm hearing that back from the public. They're saying, you guys really are the community center, and it's the exact wording we were using in our strategic plan. So that's kind of my biggest success over the time.
Definitely good to hear that kind of feedback, because I guess you don't have like a really strong base for getting feedback like on a regular basis. What have you actually learned this summer at this conference right now that you plan to take back and achieve more goals?
Well, we're actually considering some renovations, so I'm going to 2 of the renovation workshops. And some of the good parts are very simple things, but things you need to be reminded about. Make sure your architect is someone you really like that listens to you. Make sure that they have library experience, but not just library experience, but with the same size library, so they're not coming at it from too big a perspective, especially if you want to renovate, or that they have experience renovating. They're not just about building new buildings. So that's something I'm going to use in the short term very, very quickly. But customer service is so important. People let it slide, and so being reminded of the kinds of things that you can take back, and resources really that you can take back. And so a lot of the presenters will say, go ahead and use these slides. I'll send them to you. Go through your staff with them. So there's a number of the presentations. I actually plan to take board through a fundraising presentation and actually staff through a customer service presentation.
Great. Well, I'm so glad that this was helpful, and thanks for being with us.
Absolutely.
Well, my basis for assessment of any conference is that if I walk away with one kernel of something that's really valuable that I would not have thought of or been exposed to otherwise, that it was worth the trip. And in this case already, from yesterday, I've already come away with several. For example, the college that I work for is renovating an abandoned library, the campus that took over from Fairleigh Dickinson University, into an education commons. And yesterday somebody mentioned the idea of producing a blog or maintaining a blog to promote and develop enthusiasm for the building that's not yet open. And so that's something I'm going to try to do as soon as I return.
Great. So what are some of your successes that you've already had as a library manager? Some key things to keep in mind as all of you go forward?
Well, I think for me, the key to success is creating a work environment in which people feel they can experiment and make mistakes and learn from their mistakes and redesign and get feedback and then redesign. And so I think 6 years ago began in a library where none of that had been the case, where that was not the managerial style. And I think the staff was really surprised to see that they could participate. I implemented what I think is known as team-based management, so that for any project I try to match the talents of the people, of individual people with the tasks that need to be accomplished. And I did learn through trial and error that every team, no matter how small, needs to have a leader, someone who has a certain extra responsibility for keeping things moving and for reporting back. And I think that's allowed the library to adopt or appropriate an innovative kind of spirit. And I think if we tell staff members that it's not irreversible, if we try something and it doesn't work, we can always call it a pilot program. And if it doesn't work, then we just drop it and try something else.
So, what drove you to being a library manager? Is this your passion?
I frankly don't know that I have to play this role in a library. So although I think I'm very well suited to libraries and information seeking and the kind of behavior that is sustained by digging for information and learning new things all the time, I like the idea of being a facilitator in any kind of organization that has the potential for growth.
So you like the leadership aspect?
I think I do. I think I do. Yes.
Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Wonderful.
Mom.
Thank you, Kelly.
As a new library professional, it's been very interesting networking with and learning from more distinguished mid and later career professionals. I think it's been a really interesting way to see the paths that I can take and the things that I can do now so that in the future I can move where I want to move.
So what are some of the challenges that you are facing as a new library manager trying to take all this knowledge in and move forward after this?
Things are a lot different than I come from a retail management background, and there everything is very much financial based, and in the libraries it's very much patron based and what they're getting out of the library. So assessment has been a lot different, and assessment in libraries isn't at the same level as it is in retail, which I'm used to. It's also been interesting because things and changes move at a much slower pace in libraries than in retail. So it's been interesting to find out how you can get things accomplished through the library and working with such a diverse set of my coworkers.
What would you say is your number one goal or concern right now for bringing more students into your library and offering better customer service?
I think just really coming up with the customer service expectations for staff and continuously going over them. And also just to increase the training, we'll have a new set of student workers coming in the next month or so. So really making sure that they have a holistic training program so that they can help their fellow students when they come to the library.
Great, thank you so much for being with us, Amanda.
Thank you.
We're now joined by Dr. Amy Phillips, who's from the Loveland Public Library in Colorado. Thanks for joining me, Amy. So can you share some of the successes that you've had as a library manager, things that you focused on and things that you have found to be really resourceful for you?
One of the things that I've had a lot of success with is outreach and programming. And what I did was actually create a partnership among the staff that working in adult services, that you tend to be very isolated and focus on that. Instead, I've reached out to my colleagues in youth services and children's, and what we've done is created programs that are intergenerational, that develops the concept of that it's family, that we want to meet the needs of the children, the older teens that come in, and also adults. And then also looking outside of the library to collaborate with organizations within the area and within businesses and things, so that you can create a well-rounded program that has funding in certain areas, that has interests that meets the community needs, and looks at that area and says, well, we're creating this program that includes the community and reflects the community.
That's great that you are including all of your audience members and getting as many people to traffic into your library as possible. With that being said, what have you learned at this conference specifically that you feel like you can take back with you and increase your goal reach?
One of probably the best one is fundraising. With any public library, there's always not enough funds. And what was really interesting was the concept of not only working with your friends in a traditional sense with maybe a book sale or something like that, but also building up a fundraising base that you can go back to during the year and year after that, that will continue to contribute throughout a lifetime of support, and making it interesting for those donors to understand why it's important. That's something that usually you think of a fundraising campaign like a direct marketing campaign or something like that. For somebody with a much bigger organization like the World Wildlife Foundation or the American Cancer Foundation. So this has really given me a concept and an opportunity where we might be able to seek new donors, continue that, and also maybe find out, one of the things that was mentioned was once that you have that base, that you might actually end up with donations for foundations and things like that.
Great, well I'm so glad. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm here with Carl Antonucci from Central Connecticut State University Library. Carl, can you tell us what makes a library manager successful?
Well, I think today you have to be able to cope with change, and also not be afraid to try new things. And I always call it the pilot. So we're in a lot of pilot stages of many things at our library, and I give the staff credit when we succeed, and I tell them if we don't, I'll take the blame for a failed pilot project that we might have had. But I think you have to be willing to change with the times.
What are some of the strategies that you use with your staff to get further every day in your new goals?
Well, what we do is I kind of give them the freedom to work on projects. I'm not a micromanager, so they have a lot of freedom, and they also have the opportunity to have an open door policy to discuss with me any problems that they might be having in achieving their goals, and we try to work as a team because I have my goals, but I can't achieve my goals without them helping me out.
How does this library management conference help you get further and make new goals and be more successful as a whole?
Well, I've come a few times in the past, and I think it's one of the greatest conferences in the country, actually, because for library managers, because it's specifically geared toward what we do as managers. It's very small and intimate. I learn, and I come back with new ideas. Like I was telling people yesterday, I got an idea here a few years back on someone that had their library designated as a literary landmark. I did that at my library we named our library after a peace advocate, Elliot Burritt. And we had our library named Literary Landmark by ALA because I got the idea here, and we got from his descendants, his family, $25,000 endowed scholarship to start. So it is very practical advice, good advice, and I always go back with great ideas.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Carl.
Thank you.
I'm here with Luke Vander, Linden. You're from New York, and you are in library fundraising.
Right.
Can you talk about what libraries are doing to increase their fundraising and what they've done in the past?
Sure. A lot of public libraries, specifically public libraries, rely on municipal funding, government taxes, or sometimes the occasional grant or maybe a book sale. But a lot of public libraries now have started fundraising like a lot of other nonprofits do, which is using direct mail, tactics and strategies like that to try to get individual members of their communities to support them. And the public libraries that are doing it are having tremendous success. We found that during the recession, when a lot of nonprofits were pulling back from a lot of their fundraising efforts or seeing diminished response and results because of the economy, public library fundraising was going through the roof. So I'd like to encourage as many public libraries as possible to use direct mail, email, the internet, and try to get members of their community, the people who they serve, to give them donations, $75, $100 a year, and that will form a very important concrete foundation for all their other fundraising that they do.
So coming to this conference, how is it helping you move toward getting better fundraising, or are you networking here?
I think networking is important at conferences like these. For me professionally, I work at an agency that is paid to do this fundraising on behalf of libraries and nonprofits. But for me at this conference, it's less important for me to try to get clients, but more important just to spread the word that this kind of fundraising is something they should be involved in. And I think that last year I got a good response in talking to a lot of public libraries, so I'm looking forward to meeting new people and reconnecting with the same people to see how they did over the last year.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.